The Miami Dolphins got some terrible news on Tuesday afternoon when Calais Campbell signed a one-year deal with the Arizona Cardinals. Miami and Chris Grier really hope to bring Campbell back for a second season in Miami after he played well in 2024, and this just overall sucks. It does. Calais Campbell was banked on. I have been saying it over the last month that it was an absolute must-have for Campbell to return for the Miami Dolphins, because when you look at this depth chart, which we will do in just a bit, there is nobody on it that is really worth a damn other than Zach Sealer. And that's an issue. And it just rises how many needs the Dolphins have going into the draft. Like, how are they going to fill cornerback, defensive line, safety, offensive line with only limited draft capital in the top 100? It's a legit concern for me. And on today's show, we are going to look at some of the top defensive lineman targets in free agency, but mostly the NFL draft, since Calais Campbell is no longer a possibility for the Miami Dolphins. We'll look at Kenneth Grant. We'll look at some free agents. We'll hop into that right now. Calais Campbell, although is just a one-year, $5.5 million deal, could get up to $8 million with Arizona. That shouldn't be as large as an issue as it actually is for the Miami Dolphins, because I briefly mentioned it just a second ago. The Dolphins have serious needs at defensive line, CB2, safety, and left guard. And with only 3 picks inside the top 100, you cannot count on those 3 players to all be average to high level starters in the NFL right away. And my question now remains, how are they going to be able to have a solid roster in those spots and solid depth chart when you don't have a lot of veterans that can work for you? Like, on this defensive line, seriously, it's Zach Sealer and nobody. Yeah, they re-signed Benito Jones, who is a solid nose tackle last season, but he is not some above average. I would say he's a below average starter in the NFL. And now that defensive lineman number 2 spot next to Zach Sealer just becomes such a priority for this Dolphins front office going into the NFL draft, because they have no one there. And it's not even like they have any depth behind them as well. There is no depth. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, they have a couple guys in futures contracts and will be coming back trying to make their roster, but that's as good as it gets. It really is. Like, it is disgusting. When we came into the offseason and you looked at our top needs, it was offensive line number 1 on the interior, then safety number 2, and then defensive line 3, corner number 4, and then linebacker number 5. But going into the draft, it's now defensive line, cornerback, left guard, safety. Like, the offensive line, as many people want to take, I understand wanting to take an offensive lineman, but D-line and corner are now bigger needs than left guard. It's sad to see. All right, we're going to get into some players to keep an eye on here, but make sure you are subscribed to the channel, especially for our top-notch NFL draft content. When the draft rolls around, we will be live on the channel. We have the picks faster than ESPN and NFL Network. We are talking deeper on each selection that the Dolphins make, more than national media, and we have no commercials on our live streams either. So hit that sub button. Make sure you're locked in for the top Dolphins draft coverage on YouTube. But when you talk about potentially signing a free agent defensive lineman to replace Campbell, there unfortunately is just not anyone available. When you think about the hierarchy of defensive linemen, before Campbell signed, it was Calais Campbell here, the rest of the defensive linemen all the way down here. That's how much better he was than the rest of the guys available. Like, the top 3 defensive linemen available, in my opinion, we showed it on a show a couple days ago, Raekwon Davis, John Jenkins, and Taven Bryan. Like, no offense to any of these 3 players, but if the Dolphins sign any of those 3 and expect them to be the starter opposite of Zach Sealer next year, yeah, that's a serious issue. Like, I'll pass on all 3 of them. Sure, if you want to bring them in to be the D lineman number 3/4 alongside Benito Jones or behind him, yeah, I'm cool with that. But you need a legit D lineman number 2 next to Sealer. And I'm not even going to talk in depth about any of those free agent defensive linemen, because I don't see them worthy enough to talk about, because they should never be a number 2 on your defensive line room, which is why I believe that the Dolphins should absolutely be looking at a draft pick in terms of defensive line at 13 or 48, but it might end up having to be number 13 overall. But let me know your thoughts. Even though those are probably the three best defensive linemen available, should the Dolphins sign one or should they focus on the draft? If you think they should still sign one, type S. If you think they should pass and just go towards the draft, type your Ps. All right, I want to look at some first-round defensive line targets, and then we'll look at second-round targets as well. We're going to start with the top one, in my opinion. That is Kenneth Grant from Michigan. Grant is probably the only one here outside of Mason Graham that I would take at pick number 13 overall. And to me, I think this is a Chris Grier type of guy. When you think of what Grant specializes in, he specializes in stopping the run, and he has a very good first step in athleticism, which Grier really likes in his interior D lineman, a la Christian Wilkins in 2018. I think there are similar resemblance there between Grant and Wilkins. When you look at Grant's RAS, he is just a big human being, 6'3", 331. But the two things I want to focus on the most here is his vertical and his 10-yard split, because he gets off of the line of scrimmage quickly, rating 8.21 in his 10-yard split and 8.15 in his vertical. So to me, this is someone that gets off the line of scrimmage really, really quick, and you see that on his film. You see that on his tape when you're looking at him. And he had back-to-back really productive seasons for the Michigan Wolverines in 23 and 24. He was a mainstay on that defensive line that ultimately helped win a national championship for Michigan in 2023 and bounced back in 24 and had another good season as well. He's able to get pressure in the interior, 50 pressures over the past two seasons, bring down the quarterback a couple times, stop the run as well. Like, I really like Kenneth Grant. And some of the reasons why I like him, and I think the Dolphins could really fall in love with him at the 13th overall spot, is his high motor. I'll never forget the clip that he played against Penn State when he's on the interior defensive line. The Penn State running back broke through on the left side, is 30 yards downfield. You know who tackled him from behind? Kenneth Grant, because he never gave up on the play, and he has the speed at his size to somehow track down a running back. I know it said only 5'2" on his 40, but he was able to get back and make that play. I think he could be a legit interior force in the National Football League, and I would put him now, with everything that has happened with Campbell, as a top 3 player on my board for the Dolphins when it comes to the number 13 pick. Another first-round potential target for Miami is Derrick Harmon from Oregon, the defensive lineman. And in our most recent mock draft, I actually had the Dolphins trading back up into the late first round to take Harmon, someone who was insanely productive last year for the Ducks inside the Big Ten. He had 5 sacks. He was able to get after the quarterback at a very high rate, 55 total pressures. He is a more productive player than Kenneth Grant, but to me, I like Grant a little bit more because he is more of that run stopper, nose tackle breed, whereas Harmon is similar to Sealer in a way where they have a really good hybrid type of play of getting after the quarterback but also stopping the run. I think Grant complements Sealer a little bit better, which is why I would rather go Grant, but there would be absolutely no shame in Miami taking Derrick Harmon. The question is he worth being selected at 13 overall, or could you wait till the mid-20s or early 20s and trade back up and get him? That's the age-old question. The last first-round target on the defensive line is Walter Nolen, who, if you actually remember, after the Super Bowl in my mock draft, I had the Dolphins taking Walter Nolen, focusing on the interior defensive line and building through the trenches, because Nolen, like Harmon, was very productive last season in terms of stopping the run, but also getting after the pass or the quarterback. 6.5 sacks last year for Nolen. He, like Kenneth Grant, specializes in getting off the ball quick. He's a very athletic defensive lineman, and that is the part that I think could translate the most. Like, there's questions about him off the field, which is why he's been slipping at times into the second round of these mock drafts, even though I think he's a first-round talent because of his size, explosiveness, athleticism. But Nolen is another intriguing option for the Dolphins. These three are 3 guys that absolutely should be going round 1, in my opinion, and Miami should be circling on their big board. I'm going to give you which one I want to pick here in just a second, but hey, if they draft any of these guys, they'll be wearing these hats on the stage in late April, and you can get yours today. All different styles, flat brim, curved brim, the icon with the palm tree. Get yours today. Dolphins Draft Hats at chatsports.com/Dolphins Draft Hats. That link is in the description and comments of today's video. Take advantage right now. One more time, chatsports.com/Dolphins Draft Hats. Kenneth Grant is absolutely one of the top targets for the Miami Dolphins in the NFL draft, and he's likely going to rise up my board as well, alongside Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan. Two Michigan Wolverines here. Calais Campbell left you. You need to fill that defensive lineman hole next to Zach Sealer. I think Kenneth Grant is the perfect person to do that. Big player, has explosive first step, is an athlete, high motor. He's a good run stopper. To me, he complements Zach Sealer better than any of these other first-round defensive linemen, which is why I think Kenneth Grant is absolutely in play for the Dolphins at pick number 13, is in among the small group of 3 or 4 prospects I hope is available on the first round, April 24th of the NFL Draft. But I think you also could see the potential possibility of the Dolphins trading up into the first round. We explored that in our most recent mock draft. What do I mean by that? Well, say you want to go defensive back at 13, whether it's one of the safeties in Malachi Starks, Nick Emenwari, or you go with a corner in Jahdae Barron or Will Johnson. I would be fine with any of those 4 players as well, if we're going to be honest. But then you still need to figure out that defensive line spot. And if you don't want to wait till the second round, pick 48, what if you you have 9 other picks outside the first round? Or you package some of those picks to move up back into the first or a future pick to get one of those guys like Derrick Harmon or Walter Nolen. That seems like an option for Miami that I would like quite a bit. But if they wait, here are some of the top guys available at 48 potentially. Now, not all of these guys are going to be there, but I think most of them could be. The first person here is Darius Alexander from Toledo. Someone rised up boards, got some first-round buzz, but has kind of slid back into the early, middle parts of the second round in terms of what NFL draft analysts thinks right now. Played well. He's a big fella, 6'3" and 7/8, 305 pounds. Was productive for Toledo last year. He's a traits guy as well. He has explosiveness. Alexander is certainly someone that could be on the radar at pick 48. One of the guys that I think I prefer the most if the Dolphins were going defensive lineman in the second round at 48 is actually TJ Sanders, the defensive lineman from South Carolina. Same size, just a little bit thinner than Darius Alexander. Another player that has elite explosiveness for his size. Sanders is someone that has been mocked to the Miami Dolphins in the past. Early in the offseason, 2-round mock draft from ESPN, Sanders was the pick for Miami at 48. I would not be complaining about this one bit. And if you had to rank all 5 of the players that we're going to talk about as second-round draft targets on the defensive line, I think personally I would have TJ Sanders as my number 1 dude. Another player that will get buzz for Miami in the second round is Tyleik Williams, the big man from Ohio State. This is more of a nose tackle type player. You see his size, 6'2", 7'8", 334 pounds. He was able to make plays in both the run and pass game last season. But when you think of what Miami has at defensive line, they only have Sealer, who is a hybrid guy who gets after the quarterback, can stop the run as well. Does Chris Grier want to pair a run-stopping defensive lineman alongside Sealer, or do they want to continue the pass rush from the interior? To me, I actually think it might benefit Miami to get more of a run stopper to complement Sealer because of how good your edge department is. You can trust them to get some pressures, and we know Anthony Weaver brings exotic blitzes anyway. So a run-stopping defensive tackle could be the way to go here if you are the Dolphins. But you let me know, how do you want to address the defensive line if you are Miami? Should they draft one in the first round? If you think so, type 1. If they should wait for day 2 and take one in either round 2 or round 3 at pick 48 or 98 or trading up, type your 2s. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Another player here, Shemar Turner from Texas A&M. This is an intriguing name, and I bring this up for a lot of different reasons. One, he'll probably be there in the range that Miami is picking at number 48 overall, and he is a kind of D-end interior guy, hybrid. He doesn't have the size that you would initially think of as an interior defensive lineman, but we saw Calais Campbell play inside and outside last season for Miami. Maybe the Dolphins look to replicate that with Shemar Turner. And the reason why I wanted to bring up Turner in this video is because, well, the Dolphins are actually bringing him on a top 30 visit, which is why you should follow me on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff, because every time a Dolphins top 30 visit is announced, I will tweet about that and make sure you guys are notified. So follow me over at Nic_Rohloff. But there's obviously some level of intrigue from the Dolphins front office with Turner. Want to bring him in, see his medicals, learn about him more as a prospect. So he is certainly someone that I have on my radar at pick 48 or maybe late second round, early third round if the Dolphins traded up and down in the NFL draft. Last defensive lineman I'll talk about in round 2 is Alfred Collins from Texas. He is another player that is getting a late second round buzz, maybe early third round, was very productive in the run game last season for the Texas Longhorns defense. Big body, 6'5", 5'8", 332, good presence on that interior defensive line. I think that I kind of am settling in on I want someone that can fit next to Sealer as a run stopper. That's why I like Kenneth Grant. That's why I like Alfred Collins. That's why I would be willing to take the shot on Deion Walker, the defensive lineman from Kentucky, in the third round if the Dolphins don't take one in the first 2 picks. That's my opinion. But if you're overall closing out today's show with the defensive line, I think the Dolphins need to use one in the top 50. I just do. I have talked a lot about safety at 13, offensive guard at 13, corner at 13. But to me, with Calais Campbell off the board, you are now staring down the barrel of defensive line on the interior being your worst position group going into the season if you do not take one in the first couple of picks. You have 48 and 13, 2 top 50 picks. You have an opportunity to add a premier talent to that interior defensive line. And this is a deep class, so I could understand waiting, but I think getting one of those top guys could be very beneficial to Miami. We have talked in depth about the reason why Miami can't win the big games late in the season. They're too weak in the trenches, both offensively and defensively. Take a top guy in the defensive line, make your defensive line special. Imagine a front four with Jalen Phillips / Bradley Chubb on one side, Chop Robinson on the other side, one of these top 50 picks, and Zach Sealer on the inside. That's a pretty good defensive line that can create havoc getting after Drake May, getting after Josh Allen, getting after these quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow in the postseason, because that's where you want to be. You could also stop the run as well. I think it's absolutely necessary to take a pick into the top 50 when it comes to defensive line. All right, that will do it for today's episode. Make sure you are subscribed because we cover you on all pieces of Miami Dolphins news. And remember, we'll be live for the NFL Draft with deep analysis of every pick the Dolphins make. So hit that sub button and join the channel today.